What is up, gamers? M107 here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about a question that every Battlefield player has asked themselves at least once. Should I use suppressors? The answer to that question was easier in a game like Battlefield 4 because the things were just simple and straightforward. Suppressors in BF4 would hide a considerable amount of your muzzle flash and take you off of the minimap in expense of a muzzle velocity penalty. But in Battlefield 2042, things are a bit complicated. We have different types of suppressors, just like Battlefield 4, but they serve different purposes and have their own pros and cons. So before we actually get to the answer of this question, let's go over all the suppressor variations in Battlefield 2042. So generally speaking, we have two types of suppressors in BF 2042. The first type makes you invisible to everyone on the minimap and from all ranges, and even if you decide to use subsonic ammo, you won't even have hit indicators, which are the red indicators on your enemy's screen, letting them know which direction you're shooting from. However, it decreases both effective range and muzzle velocity. They're called heavy suppressors, and at this point, we've got two of them, PB heavy suppressor and Type 4 heavy suppressor. PB's penalty is focused more on muzzle velocity, while Type 4 actually decreases effective range to a greater extent. On the other hand, we've got another group of suppressors that make you invisible on the minimap, but only at a certain range to your enemies. So you're basically invisible at plus 40 meters, which means that people closer than 40 meters can still see you on the minimap, regardless of using this type of suppressors. Because of this disadvantage compared to heavy suppressors, you get less penalties using the lighter versions. We've got 6KU suppressor, which decreases your effective range without any penalty on muzzle velocity, and we've got wrapped suppressor, which decreases muzzle velocity without having anything to do with your effective range. So back to our main subject, are these things really worth using? Well, back in the day, it depended on your playstyle. People who were rushing all day and wanted to really have an easier time going through enemies would use a suppressor, and people who were not interested in going into enemy lines just simply wouldn't. In Battlefield 2042, however, heavy suppressors are almost useless and you don't really see anyone giving them a chance, or at least they've given them a chance and they couldn't have proven their worth. So you see a lot of people using light suppressors, and especially the wrapped one. I believe they just use it because the only penalty to this variant is muzzle velocity, and people can cope with that easier than anything related to firepower, like effective range. To be honest, nobody knows what firepower means exactly in Battlefield 2042. Even effective range does not have an exact definition in the game, so I guess some people just assume that as long as it has something to do with firepower, somehow damage is involved as well, so they try to avoid 6KU suppressors at all costs. But how much does it matter to be on the minimap every time you shoot? Well, that is exactly what we're trying to talk about and come to a conclusion based on this specific subject. Even in Battlefield 4, where people were more aware of their surroundings because the game was older and the player base was just much more skilled, the average player wouldn't look at their minimap as often as you might think they would. In Battlefield 2042, we've got bots that play way better than a lot of actual players, believe me. Even the fact that you can change your attachments mid-game in Battlefield 2042 doesn't convince me to use suppressors. I used to have them with me on all of my weapons and switch to them every time I felt like I need to be stealthier, but as a matter of fact, two things absolutely changed my mind. First of all, there's a lot of problems with Battlefield 2042 gunplay at the moment, and the biggest one, in my opinion, is tap firing, which kinda sucks. I've actually made a video about it, which will pop up on the top right corner. Make sure to give it a look. Now, the reason I brought this up is because some weapons just don't work very good with suppressors. I don't care what type of them you want to use, some weapons just become literally unplayable when using suppressors. For some reason, I believe vault weapons are more vulnerable to this problem. M16, M416, ACR, AEK971, these weapons just simply suck when you put on a suppressor. I've never been able to play with them comfortably. On the other hand, we've got weapons that become even better with a suppressor, like G36, MTAR-21, or even PP-29. That's basically why you see a lot of people, even your favorite content creators or streamers, using a wrapped suppressor on the PP-29. Because that gun feels different and it feels better when using that thing. And I assure you that they don't do it to stay off the radar. Your average streamer and content creator don't give a heck about that because they've been around enough to know the player base. However, you don't see a lot of people using suppressors on, let's say, MP9 or Chris Vector as often, and that's simply because those guns suck when you put on a suppressor. So some weapons are broken and suppressors make them even more powerful in some cases. Reason number two is about the player base. Battlefield is a massively multiplayer game. You come across all kinds of players and playstyles, but if you've been around for some time, especially in Battlefield 2042, a lot of people are way below the average of a game like Battlefield 4. The average BF4 player would destroy the average player of Battlefield 2042, and the reason for that is just common sense. BF4 has been out there for 10 years, people are more experienced with it, There was no crossplay back in the day, so you basically played against people with actual mice and keyboards, which makes it harder for you in most of the scenarios because they can shoot you with pinpoint accuracy. All of that makes BF 2042 average players somehow way easier to deal with. On top of that, Battlefield 2042 kind of started becoming a sensible Battlefield game around Season 4 not too long ago, and it took off with Season 5, so newbie players are a lot more in lobbies. With Call of Duty Warzone experiencing some shallow time, a lot of COD players have also decided to give BF 2042 a chance. All in all, the player base is less experienced. That's the point of all the talking. The less experienced the players, the less aware they are of what's going on around them, and that includes the minimap as well. Plus, as I mentioned before, light suppressors actually can't hide you from all threats. Enemies closer than 40 meters can still see you on the minimap, not to mention that from that distance, they will probably be able to even hear you shooting. So if you're someone who uses suppressors all the time, I don't care what type of them you're comfortable with, just do yourself a favor and stop using them for a few days and see how it goes. I'm sure you won't feel like people know where you are all the time, and also, as you stop using suppressors, you can use a muzzle attachment instead, and it will make your shots more accurate no matter what you put on, champion muzzle brake or a tactical compensator, whatever. It really depends on the recoil pattern of each weapon, but whatever you put on instead of a suppressor will benefit you more. So yeah, that's about the end of the video. I tried to get to the point as fast as possible, but kind of needed to shed light on some facts about the game to finally come to a conclusion, so I hope it was helpful and hope you guys enjoyed. If I could be of any help, go ahead and hit the like button so the video reaches out to more people. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay cool.